Today's project is inspired by sawdust and more. However, I have something similar that I had made using the same idea. I'll put a link to that video in the description. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to you if this is your first time. To make the cross, I'm going to use leftover from a 1x material. I believe it was a 1x6 material that I had previously ripped down into 1/4 inch width, and we're going to use that to make the cross. To set up the height of the blade, I'm using the setup bar to set the height of the blade to 3/8 inches high, and that will be the dado that will be made on both halves of the cross, the vertical and the one that goes across. And then I'm just using a scrap piece of 1/4 inch material to mark the width, and that would serve as my guide to make the dado. So to make all the cuts for this cross, I'm using the table saw. I'm going to make a different version of the cross that I've seen, or maybe another variation of this floating cross where I'll use the miter saw instead. So if you don't have a miter sled like the one I'm using, or you're not comfortable with the factory one that came with the table saw, you can see how to do it with the miter saw. So keep an eye for that video. To clean off the dado, I used a chisel, and then I'm using a wood file to file it flush. And then I did a quick test fit with my scrap 3/4 material to make sure it's not too loose. At this point, I want to quickly remind you that all you need is a little bit of faith and some action. Next, I measured, and I think I left about 1 inch allowance, and then made the next dado cut. It's a lot easier to do these dado cuts on the long strip of wood than cutting it to length and then trying to do the dado, because those pieces might be too short and you risk having your fingers too close to the blade. The dimensions of the cross that I'm making is approximately 5 inch by 7 inches. However, the dimensions is based on the wings. So the top part of the cross to the dado, the start of the dado, is 2 inches, and that's the same thing for the horizontal piece. The two wings are at 2 inches wide from the inside of the dado. Now with both dados completed and then cut to length, I'm just doing a quick test fit, and it looks like it fits alright. You don't want it too loose or too tight either. Next, I'm going to make the cuts to build the frame that would support the floating mechanism. For the height, I'm going with 10 inches, and that will be at a 45-degree miter, so that it will have miter joints on all the joints that I'll be creating. Next, I'm cutting what will be a brace for the horizontal. Next, I'm cutting the brace for the frame. It is supposed to be 3 inches wide. However, I made the cut at the wrong spot. It was supposed to be cut inside, not outside the lines. And then next, I marked and cut 4.5 inches for the top part of the frame. Now the piece is cut for the frame. We're going to do a quick test fit. The brace will need to be cut to the right length. So I'm just going to use my hand saw and cut it. and then do the test fit again with all the pieces as well as the base, which I will be making some a tiny adjustment to. I'm just going to cut off the ends so it's not a square. You will end up with 8 sides, technically making it an octagon. Next, I'm just giving all the pieces of the framing some good sanding to remove the saw marks. And here's all what I got from the 1 8-foot long 3/4 material, including the leftovers on the right there. And now it's time for assembly using my tight bond go-to glue, which is strong, really strong. And then I'm just using my squeeze clamps to hold everything down until the glue dries. After adding the glue to the cross and a gentle tap there to keep it secure, I'm just doing a quick hand sanding. Next, it was time to prep the cross for the floating mechanism on the cross side of things. I'm using a 3/8 Forstner bit to drill a countersink bore that will hold the screw that holds the cord that pulls it in the opposite direction from the magnets, which will be on the top part of the cross. Next, I flipped the cross and did another countersink at the top for the magnets that will be at the top of the cross. I also did another countersink on the frame to hold the magnets. Now this part is totally optional, but if you have a laser, it would be a nice thing to have something engraved on the board rather than leaving it plain. Next, we'll attach the frame to the base. I'm using a 2.5-inch Craig screw for this. And just to be on the safe side, I'm pre-drilling the hole. You typically don't need to pre-drill with a Craig screw, but I want to make sure I don't split the board by any chance. And then next I'm using CA glue to add the magnets to the top part of the cross as well as the top part of the frame. With the magnets installed, I'm just going to thread the cord that I'm using. I just found some metallic fabric thread that I'm using. If you have a fishing line or some clear translucent or transparent cord, that will be best, but I'm just using what I have handy. You will notice that both recesses that I made with the Forstner bit were a bit off, but it still worked out. I might need to replace that Forstner bit. And then to add tension to the cord, I'm just using a 1/2-inch number 6 sheet metal screw. I then use two 1/8-inch basswood planks or cut-offs to space the magnets on the top of the cross from the top of the frame to allow for the floating mechanism. And that is pretty much it. It seems like it took a lot longer than I anticipated, but it was worth it. Well worth it. Well, I hope you're encouraged to go give it a try and build one yourself. Once again, shout out to Sawdust and More for sharing this build plan on his YouTube channel. You can check him out. Okay then, my friend, that's it for this one. Until the next time, I hope you'll have a tangible experience of God's love today. Take care and God bless you, my friend. See you soon.